I've been interviewing people for the past 3.5 year, almost 3 years on the Affordable Housing Podcast, and I've always wished that sometimes we would have been able to just consolidate all the knowledge and put it into a few videos and explain it at a fifth grade level, right? So even a 10-year-old can understand all this stuff. Because I thought about it, right? What if I die too early? How am I going to leave behind all of the ideas, the lessons, the relationships, information that I've learned if I don't record it? So today, what I want to share with you is talk about, okay, let's peel back the curtain, right? On all the third-party reports that you might hear about pre-development or in the due diligence phase that you're going to face whenever you develop an affordable housing project. All right. These are the professional reviews. So like the land surveys, the environmental checks. This is what helps you and also your lenders and investors understand that your project is set up right. So I'm going to go through what each report does and how this whole process does its best to protect you from costly surprises. Okay. Now, at the highest level, right, these third party reports matter. And I would highly, highly recommend if you have a project that you're putting together right now, right? We always hear about guests talking about, hey, putting together a deal. And when you put together a deal, if that includes entitling a project, right? Entitlement is when you get that stamp of approval from the city or the county that says, hey, you have our permission to build this project, right? Based on all these reports that sufficiently addresses any concerns that you might get from the city or your lenders or your investors, right? Because all those folks, right? The city, the lenders, investors, they all expect a clean bill of health on things such as the quality of the land, right? The environmental safety, and whether or not your design of your property is in compliance with what the city or your county wants or needs or requires. So these third party reports are supposed to spot hazards or those red flags way early. So that should save you a ton of headache and most important, ton of money and time. So I like to think of these due diligence reports as doctor checkups, right? You want to get a checkup before, let's say you have a sports player, they get traded sometimes and they'll say, hey, it's pending a physical, right? Same thing as you getting a checkup before you play a big sports game. You got to find out if there's the issue now instead of halfway through the game, which might cause much more permanent long term damage to the player, in this case, to the property. Now, I'm always looking for better ways to explain all these things. So if you have better analogies to suggest, leave a comment down below so that I'm just trying to become a better dad and sometimes come up with analogies that a fifth grader can understand and try to draw that parallel to development. It's hard and fun at the same time. So I'm trying to get better. So I would really appreciate if you can give feedback. All right. All right. Let's keep going to all of the other reports. So let's talk the about the phase one environmental site assessment. Now, phase one environmental, that's what typically what they call it, they're going to focus on looking for contamination in the ground, right? If the land used to be an old gas station, right? It might have had some gasoline that leaked into the soil, right? Or it used to be a site of an old industrial site where there's spills, where there are leaks, where there are dumpings. If it used to be a former Air Force base, well, what do you think all of the jet fuel got dumped on, right? What happens when they incinerated parts? All those chemicals, they burn and they go into the soil, right? So engineers will take the soil samples, right, and see if there is a need for a deeper test. If something concerning pops up, right, then you usually go into a phase two environmental, right? So they can dig further, pinpoint what's wrong and how to fix it. And usually you can get a pretty good idea, right? What you're looking for is you're not expected to be an environmental genius. You're not. But your goal at this point is to figure out, okay, what is the problem and what is the time it's going to take to solve this problem, and how much money, how much resources is it going to take for you to solve that problem, right? Now, I like to think of a phase one environmental study similar to Let's say you have a metal detector and you're on a beach and you're looking for treasure in the beach, or that someone might have lost a ring or something like that, right? If it beeps, then that's your phase one, right? You dig, you find something. So then your phase two might be, hey, you have to dig deeper now to see what's really hidden or hiding underneath the sand. Same concept, but for development projects. Hopefully that was a good analogy. Another report. This is called the Asbestos Containing Material Survey. And if your project is an older structure, right, usually experts will inspect that home looking for asbestos in the tiles, the water heaters, the adhesives, the drywall. Because if it's undisturbed, I mean, you could leave it alone. But if you are renovating and you're demoing, right, you don't want it to fly everywhere. So it's going to require abatement, and that could be really, really expensive. So just make sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into, right? Not everything is a straight up easy conversation where all you're doing is ripping up the floors or ripping up the carpets and putting new flooring, right? It can happen, right? I like to think of asbestos as a, if you go to a museum and there is like an artifact or a treasure, right? It's like sits in a case. And if it just sits there, it's okay. But if you must move it, you kind of need special care because some of these things might be really, really old and fragile. So that if you just lift it incorrectly or you apply too much force, you could break the artifact. You don't want to do that, right? Think about the old Constitution or maps, right? They're very fragile because it's just really, really old paper. You got to take really good care of that. Okay. Then you have the geotechnical report, the geotech report. The geotech will tell you about the soil's makeup, right? Whether it's clay, whether it's sand, whether there's rocky ground, and how that affects foundations. Because as you have probably heard, right? If you want to build a home, you need a strong foundation. Because if you're a weak foundation, the home's going to crumble. So if you're building in a place with a lot of clay, right, you might need special supports, right? Or soil treatment so that your building won't crack. Very important. It's very similar as if you are planting a tree. The dirt is super rocky. You might need different tools and fertilizers versus if it was a soft and loamy and nice soil, right? Very, very different. But that's what a geotech report is going to do for you. And it's going to help inform your architects, your engineers, your structural engineers on how to go about building that property. Then you're going to hear a lot about the ALTA or NSPS survey and the Topo survey. The ALTA or NSPS survey, they're going to confirm your property lines, right? Whether or not there are any easements on that property and any sort of improvements on a property. That's important, right? Because you don't want to build your apartment building 2 feet over into your neighbor's property because that land doesn't belong to you. Okay, you gotta be very careful. Then if there are existing easements where somebody had a right to have a driveway through your land and you try to build a building over it, you can't do that, right? Because that easement was already there. Maybe that easement was for a driveway so that the landowner in the middle does not get landlocked, meaning they don't have any access to their property. Big no no. And you got to be really clear about that. Then you have the topographical survey or topo survey. And this is the one that kind of maps the ups and downs of your land, right? This helps you design the roads. This helps you think about the grading of the property and also drainage. These are very important for your city approvals, right? You can't be building on your neighbor's lot. And I like to think of the ALTA survey as the lines on a coloring page, right? There you kind of define all your boundaries. But then the topo survey is sort of that shading on that coloring page that shows the hills and valleys that based on elevation. Think about it that way. Then there's tree surveys, right? In certain states, cities, the study's going to check whether or not your land has important or protected trees or protected tree species. Some areas won't let you just uproot them or bulldoze them without a plan, right? Some communities want your your building to look a certain way because they want to add more greenery to the city, blah, blah, blah. So they might also expect you to save certain trees, right? If there's a historical tree or a heritage tree or plant new ones in exchange, all that stuff matters, right? It's they're like, oh, what if you have a neighborhood with a 200-year-old oak tree or a 200-year-old pine tree? You can't cut it down simply because your blueprint says so. So you gotta really think about it and know what's happening in your city and what the county or the city cares about. Because the last thing you want is a lawsuit or an environmental issue that's going to hold up your project, and that's going to cost you a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of expenses, especially interest if you're servicing debt on it. Okay. Then there is the preliminary plat, the final plat, and auto plan development exhibits. Now, during entitlement, you're going to draft a preliminary plat. That's going to show where your proposed lots are or your buildings. And after the city reviews it, then you'll finalize it. The plan development exhibits are usually big, big checklists, right? They're going to show the roads, the setbacks, other really key details. And the city is going to want very, very thorough designs for your water, your sewer, and drainage because guess what? Sometimes there are big storms and you have to figure out where that water is going to go. Because the last thing you want is also for it to start flooding. So I like to think of this as like a jigsaw puzzle box, right? You show the full picture now, so the city planners or the building department they know exactly what you plan to build. So you're showing the whole picture, so they can visually see it. What's happening in this parcel of land? What are you going to build there before you build? Same concept, right? Just like if you're solving a puzzle, usually you have a cover of the box that you can look at to see how you're putting everything together. Same concept here. Then, of course, there are engineering docs, right, for the site. There's drainage, there's grading, and these really cover the water plans, right? The erosion control. If you're on a hill, how are you going to prevent the dirt from sliding, right? How are you going to grade the property, right? If you're going to turn farmland into a paved community, all that water has to go somewhere because previously it was getting absorbed by the grass and the dirt, but you just poured concrete all over it. So where's the water going to go? So you're going to have to figure out, hey, where are my retention ponds, right? Where is the excess water going to drain to? Because sometimes you can't overwhelm the city's resources. So those storm drains are going to keep the flooding at bay while a big storm is happening, right? All right. I talked a lot about drainage. And then finally, we're getting to the end, right? Permitting. Permitting is when you submit everything, right? Your environmental, your topographical, your civil engineering, structural engineering to the city or county so you can get your building permits, right? They're gonna make sure they get your construction docs and your blueprints. They're gonna make sure your design meets building codes, from how wide your roads are to what your stormwater systems look like, right? If you're making a 3-floor basement garage, they're going to figure out, hey, how are you going to pump out the water when it comes in, right? All these things need to happen. But the beautiful thing about it is, as a developer, you're not expected to know everything. You got to have a construction guy. You got to have your engineers. You got to have your architects. You got to have people that understand what are these issues because there's no way you can be expected to be an expert on every single thing. But knowing a little bit of everything allows you to start testing and looking for the right people. So that's why I made this video for all of you, because one, it's going to help our kids, but most important, this is information that you can know so that you can sound intelligent about it whenever you go to an interview, whenever you go talk to anybody else. You now know all these reports. And I know that there has not been much education on all this. So that's why I made this video. And I have learned so much from my mentors, so much from all the guests on the podcast for the past 3.5 years. I'm so grateful for all of you that have been a part of the podcast, that have really supported the podcast. So Pandazilla, He said in Austin is super prevalent. Would sometimes take a week for them to go out and mark all the trees so we wouldn't cut down a 20-acre property. That's exactly right. Right? All these things they matter. You think they're just a tree, but nope, that's not the case. Not the case. All right. So this is fun. I am really, really enjoying this. Hey, I appreciate you all so much. If you have not seen yet, go to youtube.com/ at Kent_HE. You're going to see that I just released a new podcast episode with Kathy Thomas. She is the Chief Housing Officer of Southern Nevada's Regional Housing Authority. She went through all the different scenarios and all the different possibilities with real life examples on how the developers partner with housing authorities. You really got to watch it because that's tens of millions of value right there. If you know how to put together a deal and get guaranteed rents or get capital through co-developments with a housing authority and you get to help people at the same time, that is the magical formula. This is education I wish was out there 3 years ago before I started. And I'm serving up on a platter for all of you so that you guys can be super prepared on how to go and approach this. You can do it. I learned all these things from interviewing folks and I brought them front and center so that all of you can learn it. I believe in all of you. Take the time. Development is sometimes the hardest thing in real estate because there's so many pieces, so many moving parts, not just construction. There's financing, there's asset management, there's compliance. There's so much going on. It's supposed to be hard. But I believe that you're watching this because you're okay with the hard. And just like I tell my daughter every single day, in this family, we do hard things. We put in the time, we learn the subject, and we apply it so that we can help people. And I'm very confident that all of you are listening right now because you want to help people. You can decide who you want to help, but the how is housing. I'm so glad to be in this community with all of you. Thank you so much for caring about affordable housing. Without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. So I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for joining the live. Thank you so much for being part of the lives for 559 days. Wow. We're going to do it for one more day tomorrow. All right. Let's keep it going. Have an amazing Thursday, everybody. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. This is not legal advice. I'm just simply consolidating all the knowledge that I built over the years and looking to distill it in a manner that even you, a fifth grader, my kids, all of our kids can understand. So if you want to be in development, it's just one of the first steps. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 560. Have a good one, everybody.